So our team was in Missouri and we had landed late. We were late getting to the school. I walked in. It was a chapel service. There were a lot of students there that they did a quick introduction. I walked on stage, apologized for being late. We had had some weather that morning and I began to just share what, I was led to share that day. And I noticed that on the front row, there was a young lady who literally cried the entire time that I was speaking. And when it was over, at each of our assemblies and chapels, I always ask three questions. And the questions have to do with, is there someone in your life you need to forgive? Do you feel like you've been rejected? And is suicide a real option? So I always deal with those subject matters pretty straightforwardly with students. And I did on this particular day in Missouri. And when I got through speaking, I was strongly led to walk off stage, walk down to the front row, and just sit down next to this young lady who had cried the entire time I had talked. The principal joined us and we were sitting there and I said, honey, I noticed that you raised your hand for all three of my questions. Is there someone you need to forgive? Do you feel rejection? Is suicide an option? And she did. She said, yeah, I raised my hand for all three of those. I said, you want to talk a minute? She said, I'd like to. And I said, how old are you, first of all? She said, I'm 18. I said, so you're a senior? She said, yeah, I'm getting ready to graduate. I said, well, why were you so upset the entire time we were together today? She said, do you really want to know? I said, I really want to know. She said, I'm 18 years old. I've been in 22 different foster homes. Why did 22 families reject me? And I'll be real honest with you. I didn't know what to say. So I quickly said a quick prayer, and it was like this. Hey, if you and I don't have a conversation really fast and you don't tell me what to say, you and I are both going to look really bad. And all I heard was, ask this question, Dino. And I said, who do you live with now? And she smiled, and it broke the ice. She said, a family adopted me. They loved me, and I loved them. I said, see, it does work. She said, yeah. She says, but Dean, why did 22 families reject me? And we talked some more, and I was able to get her some help, got one of the counselors in the schools involved. And I had to leave to go that night to speak at a convention in a different part. So I got to the convention, and halfway through that convention, I was just strongly led to talk about the subject matter of rejection. And I referred back to what I'd experienced earlier in the day with that young lady who had been rejected, she said, her words, by 22 families. And as I began to tell that story, I noticed as I looked out across that vast audience that so many people were doing this. They were nodding their head in agreement. And I thought, we're on to something. I left that town, went back home. That Sunday, I ministered in a church, basically all adults. I was again led to tell the story of what I had just experienced in Missouri a couple of days earlier. And as I shared the story, again, I saw the nodding of the heads. I gave an invitation, an altar call. If you feel like you've been rejected in your life and you want to get to the other side of that, I'm going to invite you to get out of your seat and come forward. 85% of the church came forward. The next day, I'm in a huge public high school. 1,700 students, 800 kids on this side of the gym, 900 on this side of the gym. And I'm walking back and forth on the gymnasium floor, working both sides of that room. And all of a sudden I hear that still small voice say, tell the story of the rejection. And I was like, if I tell that story, we're going to be kicked out of this school. We're in a public school. Tell the story, Dino. And so I did. And again, I saw the nodding and the students didn't even realize it. Like the adults the day before had not even realized it. Like the students that night in that convention had not even realized it. They were nodding because it was touching something deep in their hearts. And I said this, I'll never forget that day. I said, if you're here today and you've got the guts to raise your hand and say, I've been rejected, but I want to get past that pain and move to what I know can be acceptance. When I get to 3, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. And that day in that school with 1,700 students there, before I got to number 2, hands were going up. By the time I got to 3, 1,074 teenagers raised their hand saying, hey, Dino, you're talking to me. What's that got to do with you today? Maybe, just maybe, you too know the pain of rejection. I do. I lived it for a long time. But I also know that on the other side of rejection is this wonderful moment called acceptance. Here's a verse you can consider for your life as you talk about and talk with God about you moving from rejection to acceptance. It's a promise found in Ephesians 1:6. To the praise of the glory of his grace, by which he, Jesus, made us accepted in the beloved. You, my friend, are accepted. And that's one reason that your life really does matter.